The Biden administration treated the press as poorly as any president has ever treated them, gave them less access, answered no questions, no transparency at any given time. Donald Trump's answered more questions in 3 weeks than Joe Biden answered in 4 years. Elon Musk answered more than
also a lot of the answers.
Come on, Brian. This administration is giving the most access to the press they could possibly want.
Baker, who is a longtime foreign correspondent, he covers the White House for the New York Times. He said, having served as a Moscow correspondent in the early days of Putin's reign, this reminds me of how the Kremlin took over its own press pool and made sure that only compliant journalists were given access.
Okay, can we just address this dictator business? I'm going to quote from some statistics put together. So our old friend Chris Cillizza, who calculated that in the first month of the Trump administration, the president took 1,009 questions. Hardly dictatorial behavior. Same stat for Joe Biden, 141. And I would remind you all that in 2023, the Biden administration revoked the hard passes of 442 journalists. And at the time, the White House Correspondents Association took, quote, a non-committal stance. So if you're worried about transparency, Trump is being far more transparent than any recent administration.
Why were their press passes revoked?
I don't know.
Was it because they didn't go to the White House frequently? Because
I don't know. They lost their access.
That happens in every administration.
They lost their access.
Besides, the Biden people never called on James Rosen from Newsmax, and he's a real legitimate reporter.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about the continued meltdown from the liberal media over the fact that the White House, President Trump, has decided to take back control over the privilege that these so-called journalists, a lot of whom propagandists, have when it comes to covering his presidency, right? And the access that they get to the White House. Now, we already know what happened to the AP, okay? They limited some of the AP's access to the president, to the Oval Office, due to the fact that the AP refused to acknowledge that the Gulf of Mexico is now the Gulf of America, a.k.a. the AP continues to dead name the Gulf of America, and that's harmful and bigoted, right? And due to this harmful and bigoted behavior, the White House decided to limit the AP's access. And a judge just upheld the White House's ability to do that, at least for right now.
The Associated Press will continue to have limited access to the Oval Office and Air Force One after a federal judge denied the AP's request for an emergency order to reinstate its press access. After the White House restricted the AP from entering certain spaces over the AP's refusal to adopt the term Gulf of America instead of Gulf of Mexico, the AP sued to have its privileges restored. The judge ruled in favor of the White House. His reasoning for not reinstating full access was the AP still has access to cover events involving the president, even if it's not in person. However, the judge warned the White House's actions might not hold up in court, saying the law may not be on its side if it continues to restrict the AP's access, and the decision is, quote, clearly viewpoint discrimination. The judge wrote it might be appropriate for the White House to consider if what they're doing is really appropriate given the case law. This case echoes a similar incident in 2019 when a federal court ordered the White House to restore CNN reporter Jim Acosta's press credentials after they were revoked by the White House. The judge in this case called for an expedited briefing with a hearing scheduled for March 20th. The White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, reacted to the judge's ruling on Fox News' Sean Hannity program.
The judge's denial of the Associated Press's request reinforces what I said from the podium last week and what President Trump has been saying. Covering the American presidency in the most intimate and limited spaces in this White House, in the Oval Office, on the Air Force One, is a privilege. It is not a legal right. And we want all voices to have that opportunity. And that's why we've expanded the James S. Brady briefing room to invite truly legitimate, independent journalists, podcasters, and other media types into that room to cover this president with honesty and accuracy.
Last week,
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that. Now, the White House is essentially doubling and tripling down on this idea that it is a privilege to cover the president, it's a privilege to be a part of the press pool, and it's not a right, okay? And they are basically driving that point home by saying that, you know what, we're not going to let the White House Correspondents Association choose the press pool anymore, the people that can basically ask the president questions and be a part of that rotating press pool. No. We're now going to take charge of this process. Take a look.
As you all know, for decades, a group of D.C.-based journalists, the White House Correspondents Association, has long dictated which journalists get to ask questions of the President of the United States in these most intimate spaces. Not anymore. I am proud to announce that we are going to give the power back to the people who read your papers, who watch your television shows, and who listen to your radio stations. Moving forward, the White House press pool will be determined by the White House press team. Legacy outlets who have participated in the press pool for decades will still be allowed to join, fear not, but we will also be offering the privilege to well-deserving outlets who have never been allowed to share in this awesome responsibility. Just like we added a new media seat in this briefing room, legacy media outlets who have been here for years will still participate in the pool, but new voices are going to be welcomed in as well. As part of these changes, we will continue the rotation amongst the 5 major television networks to ensure the President's remarks are heard far and wide around this world. We will add additional streaming services which reach different audiences than traditional cable and broadcast. This is the ever-changing landscape of the media in the United States today. We will continue to rotate a print pooler who has the great responsibility of quickly transcribing the President's remarks and disseminating them to the rest of the world. And we will add outlets to the print pool rotation who have long been denied the privilege to partake in this experience, but are committed to covering this White House beat. We will continue to rotate a radio pooler and add other radio hosts who have been denied access, especially local radio hosts who serve as the heartbeat of our country. And we will add additional outlets and reporters who are well suited to cover the news of the day and ask substantive questions of the President of the United States, depending on the news he is making on that given day.
Yeah, so unsurprisingly, the liberal media propagandists, they are upset with this, okay? Like, for example, Jamel Hill. She says, if the White House insists on handpicking reporters, not a single news organization should show up at the next press briefing. Take a stand. Now, again, what I find to be hilarious about this, and this is why I'm covering this story, is that once again, it reveals the selective outrage of the left, okay? Because Joe Biden, quite literally, was handpicking the reporters that were able to ask him questions, right? He had a little note card. You guys remember that little note card? And he was selectively calling on reporters to ask him questions that wouldn't be too tough for his old mind to handle. Yeah, that happened. But, you know, hey, the Trump administration, according to the liberal media, they're the ones that are trying to be like Russia, right? Like Putin, okay? This is a Putin move, according to MSNBC.
Can't make a distinction based on an organization that you just don't like. And so I think you're right. They don't seem to understand that. They want to be able to pick who asks the president questions. That goes against decades and decades of tradition.
And the press office trying to sell this as an act of populism, giving power back to the people, when, of course, as Peter says, it just gives power to the administration to control the message.
Wow. Wow, incredible stuff. Incredible. But it doesn't stop there, guys. It does not stop there, okay? Because the liberal media, these are the same individuals that decided that, you know what, Fox News is not worthy of being a part of the White House press. And let's actually play a clip of Brian Stelter discussing this on CNN, having an open discussion about how the White House should consider banning Fox News back when Biden was president. Take a look.
There are, these questions about Fox's, as Fox radicalizes and as it becomes even more and more of a political tool. Zerwick, you wrote a column recently for The Sun about this, saying Fox should be viewed as a political tool. And that raises a question. Should it be a part of the White House press pool? Should it be afforded the privileges that come with news gathering? Even though they do have some news reporters at the White House, you're saying they're primarily a political tool. So should that be reassessed, Zerwick?
Listen, I really do. I think it's a discussion we need to have. Look, you're not supporting democracy. You're not supporting the larger values of this culture. They don't even stand up as a opposition party, but there's nothing journalistic in what Lachlan Murdoch said. And you know what? I say, hey, you know what? Let's take them at their word. Let's not let them on the plane. You want to let the Proud Boys on your plane, on Air Force One? No, I don't think so. These guys are doing the same thing.
Yeah, so the hypocrisy is stunning, to say the least. But hey, this is where we're at, okay? The liberal media, they don't have any principles whatsoever, okay? It is basically about whatever benefits them, whatever allows them to push their agenda, and they will pretend as if their agenda is not partisan or biased, when clearly It is, okay? And the president of the White House Correspondents Association actually took to MSNBC to fume over the latest move from the White House to control the press pool rotation. Take a look.
And who wrote that statement? The president of the White House Correspondents Association, Eugene Daniels, an MSNBC political contributor. I'm not big on navel gazing when it comes to the press, but Eugene, for people who don't understand the importance of the press pool at the White House, the people who follow the president day in and day out, explain the big picture implications for Americans getting news, also for the constitutional order.
Yeah. Let me explain how the coverage of the presidential pool works. Whether this president or others are in the Oval Office, traveling abroad, traveling down the street, there's always a group of journalists that is called the press pool that covers that person's every move. They share their notes, their video, their sound with their colleagues who are not there so that they can cover the president. And that information goes to the people in this country and all over the world. And for nearly a century, the WHCA, the White House Correspondents Association, has created a professional standards for format, link accuracy, most importantly for the American people. And they could trust that those standards created by the folks that actually do the work were understood by everyone. You could trust the documents and the reports that were coming out of that. That it can no longer be trusted, frankly, because at the end of the day, the standards will be created by the folks that are being covered. And that is different than it has ever been. And at the end of the day, like I said in my statement, this is not about us at the WHCA. This is about the American people being able to depend on what comes out of these press pools and getting unvarnished look at the people who run their country.
We just saw a picture of one of the deans of the White House press corps, Peter Baker of the New York Times. He wrote this, Eugene: having served as a Moscow correspondent in the early days of Putin's reign, this reminds me of how the Kremlin took over its own press pool and made sure that only compliant journalists were given access. Is this a warning to journalists? If you ask questions or write stories the president doesn't like, you're not going to have access.
You know, I think at the end of the day, what the White House has said publicly, or a White House official said, that this was an F around and find out moment for the WHCA, not thinking, it seems, about the implications for the chilling effect it might have, and most importantly, the impact on the American people. Like I said, to be able to trust what comes out of those press reports. And, you know, in a free country, leaders shouldn't get to choose. And for a very long time, White Houses, both Democrat and Republican, have allowed the WHCA, a third party of elected people that are in the board, to help coordinate all of these pools, because they know that it makes them look strong. You're not picking the people who are doing it, and you stay away from it. And frankly, many of them decided that it took up too much of their time. That is changing, it seems, today.
Yeah, so I want you guys to understand, right? I want you guys to understand, because this is hilarious to me. This is hilarious. It's not the White House who should choose who has access to the president, right? Even though it is the White House, okay? No. It's actually a third party of independent individuals who were elected, and those are the people that you can trust.
He has a hard time running against Vice President Harris because she's a black woman. You remember, actually, when he would tussle with the women that would ask him questions, our colleagues on the White House beat. Reporters. You know, he held his kind of most angry self for black women, right? If they asked him a question, he would have the worst things to say about them. And so you're seeing that, right?
I can think of three off the top of my head.
Top of our head. And when he talked about Joe Biden got worse, Harris was born like that, right? That's different. That's a dog whistle to folks to say, you know, the white guy just got older and it got worse, but the black lady was born dumb. That is the kind of thing that Donald Trump is saying and selling to folks.
Yeah.
Boy, I love the internet. I really don't. Okay, I think it might be my favorite invention ever, because these individuals, it's just very funny, because they really want you to believe that no. The White House should not be able to choose who has access, right? They should be able to choose the press. We should be able to choose the press. A third party, don't worry. We're not biased, right? We're not going to allow our political opinions to influence our decision, except, as you can see, that's clearly what's happening, right? That's clearly what's happening. Okay, either way, there's viewpoint discrimination, right? That is what they're accusing the Trump White House of doing, except there's already viewpoint discrimination. What is the viewpoint discrimination? Well, it's viewpoint discrimination against conservatives. Do you really think that this guy Eugene Daniels, the guy that runs the White House Correspondents Association, do you really think that they're not politically biased? They're 100% politically biased. And this is why you see the mainstream media overall is politically biased. And you don't see too many conservative outlets because conservative outlets are systemically shunned. Okay? Now, again, I just find it to be fascinating because I think that the White House is trying to remedy this discrimination by allowing more diversity and inclusion, right? This is the first time I've ever seen the left, the liberal media, be against diversity and inclusion, because that is what Miss Caroline Leavitt is talking about when she says, hey, we need to open up access to the press room, to others, to non-traditional media, especially in a time like this where non-traditional media, alternative media, has more credibility than legacy media. So, yeah, I mean, I don't think that it's a bad idea to allow others to get access when they have been historically discriminated against, right? That argument is all well and fine, all good for liberals when it comes to anything else. But when it comes to this, though, all of that goes out the window. They don't believe in diversity and inclusion anymore, right? They don't believe in that. Again, it's amazing how that works. So, you know, it's just hilarious because all the things they're complaining about are some of the same things that Joe Biden did. Like, for example, Biden also changed the White House press pool, cutting off more than 440 reporters' credentials. Let's read here. In 2023, more than 440 reporters lost press credentials after President Joe Biden's White House modified its rules for eligibility for permanent passes. Credentialed White House press members dropped from 1,417 members to 975 members after the White House unveiled new standards requiring an annual renewal of hard passes. Politico reported in 2023, journalists without hard passes were still authorized to apply for day passes to the White House. Now, I guarantee you, a vast majority of the journalists that lost their credentials, okay, probably were conservative, right? They probably were from conservative-leaning outlets. I guarantee you. I guarantee you. The Biden White House policy was launched in May 2023 and required reporters to prove employment with an organization whose principal business is news dissemination and show that they have, quote, accessed the White House campus at least once during the prior 6 months for work or have proof of employment within the last 3 months to cover the White House. The Biden White House defended its decision to cut off routine access to these reporters, claiming many of the journalists whose passes expired haven't accessed the White House in the previous 3 months. At the time we initiated this process in early May, roughly 40% of hard pass holders had not accessed the White House complex in the prior 90 days, the White House said in a 2023 statement to Politico. Quote, we think this demonstrates we've led a thoughtful and thorough process that preserves robust media outlets to campus for everyone who needs it, whether that be with a hard pass or a day pass. Yeah, so what you have here is the Trump administration working to restore the press passes of those journalists who wrongly had their press passes revoked by the Biden administration. And does anybody remember the outrage from the media, right? Saying, hey, no, this is an attack on the press. Does anybody remember the media outrages over that? No, they didn't. They didn't give a damn. Why? Because, again, vast majority of those journalists were probably conservative. That's probably what happened. That's exactly what happened. So now you have the Trump White House basically expanding the press pool, and the legacy media, they're crying discrimination. They're saying it is discrimination to have more diversity, which is hilarious, right? Because, again, in any other context, right, they would not agree with that. But now, all of a sudden, they're saying that diversity is discrimination, except in this case, this is not like DI, which is actually anti-white discrimination. There is no real discrimination happening here. What's happening is that the legacy media is on the way out, right? That they are just not as relevant or as important as they used to be. So therefore, you have to allow others to have access, okay? And, you know, it is what it is. It is what it is. I don't see anything wrong with it. It's not like they can't continue to do journalism. They can continue to cover the White House. They can cover the president. They just don't get certain privileges, right? And that's what they are. They are privileges. It is not a right, okay? It's not a right. So at the end of the day, if these people were so upset, they should have cried about it under Joe Biden when he did this, right? So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.